Do you think Kamala going on Fox is a good idea? I haven't seen it yet. Okay, I got to start from the beginning. Sorry.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Bret.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the...
Yes, ma'am. May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and
they didn't bring up that bill.
Responding.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. She had the House, she had the White House, she had the Senate. What's the holdup? I was told there was going to be 8 Republicans that wanted to work with Biden. What happened?
To the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
6 Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise.
Why did Sinema vote against it? That's funny. I didn't know that.
Gary. Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you.
Here's the thing, and let's be honest here. Interpersonal violence is fucking terrible, and that is a disastrously horrible thing to have happen to a family, and predators are a scourge on humanity. There's no doubt about that. But when you're talking about populations of millions of people who come and work in this country and live and become part of the fabric of our nation, to pick out the few people that commit horrific crimes and use that to slander everyone would be crazy. Especially so to open up hate an entire group of people based on the actions of the worst of the worst. Can you imagine if we did that with Catholics? If we said every Catholic was a child molester because the Catholic Church has had a problem with child molestation, that would be insane.
George is saying if those men had been properly vetted.
I mean, and the reason why I bring that up is because Bret Baier went to a Catholic high school. So presumably Bret is a Catholic. Would Bret like us to say that every Catholic is a child molester? Because the Catholic Church has covered up literally hundreds and thousands of pedophile priests, both in America and around the world? That would be insane. Pan-Africanisms.
Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened.
Okay, first of all, that's just magical Christmas land. That's magic. This is, by the way, this type of conversation is for dumbasses. If you legitimately believe that you can end all immigration and therefore no murders will happen, you're a very stupid person. This happened 1 hour ago. LA Catholic Church payout for clergy abuse top $1.5 billion. 300 priests who worked in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles have been accused in public records of sexually abusing minors. 300 Catholic priests. So he mentioned 3 murders just in the entire country. In all of LA, one city, you got 300 child molesting priests.
This is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Bret,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Bret.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration.
By the way, this is depraved. To take a mourning family member who lost a family member and parade them around to attack all of a group of immigrants, of millions of people. This is Der Stürmer level shit. This is insane.
Border policies catch and release. They were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist. They will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Bret. Well, that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question. There were 90-plus executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are
scrambling.
Are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
But let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara.
Well, this is a very good pivot. This is a very good pivot. She's like, listen. Just because I campaign on something doesn't mean I believe it. Oh, wait, I'm campaigning right now. Oh, fuck. Beesh, thank you for the tier 2. Tier 3, rather. You are a king. The one thing you can count on with Kamala Harris, she will definitely do whatever her consultants tell her to do 5 seconds before she goes out there and speaks.
Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners, every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what? You got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think it's real. He spent $20 million on those.
By the way, do you see how this is how transgender people are on a knife's edge right now with the Democratic Party? Now, in the Labour Party in the UK, they're abandoning trans care. They're abandoning trans people. And those Labour MPs that are abandoning trans people in the United Kingdom are coming to the United States and giving advice to the Democratic Party. Trans rights is going to start falling off the knife edge, just like immigrants did. Just like climate change did, just like fracking policy did. Like all that shit is falling off, and liberals are going to have a rapidly shrinking list of things that is supposedly why you need to vote for Kamala.
Trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on plans for the American people, I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as president of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest...
She wants to give tax cuts to billionaires. They're just called land developers. She wants to give massive tax breaks to the wealthy Wall Street corporations and landlords. She wants to give tax cuts. What are you talking about? Come on, Kamala. This applies to you too. What are you talking about?
Corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So You're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation.
Wait. Can we give this again? I got to do this question again.
Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite.
Guys, she was also a politician in California.
Is whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which
Guys, Joe Biden would not have supported giving tax breaks to developers / a new tax credit. Wow, she's doing bold new ideas that are definitely not the continuation of Joe Biden.
is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Bret.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track.
I mean, he's just like honest to God, she may be one of the worst politicians I've ever said. I've ever seen. Like, just substanceless. How can you watch this and think she's good? I mean, like, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to an aesthetic rejection of Donald Trump and not really having any stakes in politics except for the feeling that you get when you turn on the news. Like, that is the situation that we're in right now. That is the situation we're in, where basically none of these liberals give a fuck about anything. They don't care about anything. They refuse to care about anything. And it's just shapes and colors. Why do I like something like that? Like, liking politics. What is like liking politics? What is like caring about like real politics? Like, there's nothing else that compares to this, where you just have so many dumb fucks it's just incomparable. Where people have this like sociopathic parasocial attachment to people who don't care about them. What is like it? Being a Jets fan. I mean, sports maybe.
They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But
people
you're the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What
God,
is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today.
By the way, she didn't answer the question. She just said it's not supposed to be easy. Which I think is actually, I want to give Harris credit here. This is the first time where I think she was an able politician, which is she dodges everything, but I think dodging this one is the only way to respond.
Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
For example, like the Democrats are locking up peaceful protesters in Michigan and then calling the Congresswoman of Detroit an anti-Semite when she said it was an unfair application of the law. Is that what you mean? When you throw and prosecute pro-Palestinian protesters who have done nothing but occupy the quads of their colleges and treat them like they're doing some sort of kidnappings? Like, what are you talking about? You are turning the state violence on all sorts of Palestinian protesters, calling them dupes and proxies of Iran with no evidence, exposing them to Palestinians being attacked on the street and murdered and maimed. What the fuck are you talking about?
Saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump...
The significance of that.
You call Donald Trump He's misguided. You say now
He's unstable. He is unstable, Bret.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the...
Then why isn't he running? Why isn't he running?
Experienced to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Bret, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
but those proxies were getting funded by
my commitment
Iran.
to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's administration.
A deal that you guys did not renew. So, like, this is one of the things that's really kind of fascinating about people like Kamala Harris is they'll be like, Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. And it's like, well, you were president for 4 years. Did you re-enter the Iran nuclear deal? No, I did not. So you think his decision was correct then because you didn't overturn it. It's the same thing with sanctioning Cuba and Venezuela, or the moving of the capital from Tel Aviv to, the moving of the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You guys said that was bad up until the point where you endorsed it. Why didn't you move the embassy back to Tel Aviv? So you can't say that Donald Trump's policies were bad while then adopting them.
regime.
That we had an American military.
By the way, you can't say she's qualified to be president because she was vice president, but then also say she bears no responsibility for the administration's policies that she's also not distancing herself from. Now that she's the candidate for the Democratic Party, she could say, hey, Joe Biden and I didn't always see eye to eye, but when I became his vice president, I swore that I would give my opinion and I would follow his orders. And I have done that. And on this issue, I would do something differently if I was president. But I will continue to enforce this administration's policies because I respect democracy and I respect the American people. And we only have one president at a time. So I will always give Joe Biden, as vice president, as Democratic nominee, my best advice. But he's the president right now. He's making those decisions, and I support him. And I trust his judgment. Where we disagree, I will have a different policy going forward. That's why you're voting for me now. And that is the only way to run a country. You can't have 5 different presidents. You can't have 5 different pretenders. You have one president at a time. And here's what I'll do differently. That's all you have to say. It's not complicated. It's fucking easy. How come they can't figure this out?
Military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel
who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have
there
much more
are
to say,
a lot of things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and that's why we
invite everyone to
the policies she has are: I'll give a tax credit for first-time home buyers. I'll give $50,000 to black entrepreneurs to I'll give $50,000 to black entrepreneurs whose parents didn't go to college and live in a minority majority district, as long as they're not Tauruses. Those are her amazing policies.
Go to KamalaHarris.com and you will see that I have.
Does she still support the PRO Act? I haven't heard her say anything about it.
Pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them.
Comprehensive. Okay. She's going to cut taxes. The child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Those Americans will get to keep more of their hard-earned income. They will also expand the child tax credit to provide $6,000 tax credit to families with a newborn. Rolling back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. So you're going to keep Trump's tax cuts for not the wealthiest Americans. Quadrupling the tax on stock buybacks. And other reforms to ensure the very wealthy are paying by the same rules as the middle class. Okay, so quadrupling means it'll go to 4%. A tax of 4% on stock buybacks, because it's currently 1%. I just looked up the rate to figure out what it would be. A 4% tax on stock buybacks. The tax rate on long-term capital gains for those earning $1 million or more will be 28%. Wow, a small increase to the capital gains tax for people who make more than $1 million a year. Okay. $3 million more rental units and homes that are affordable, aka she's going to give big tax breaks to large landlords. Amazing. Corporate landlords are going to have a bonanza. Also, 3 million in only 4 years. We already build more than that. Is that 3 million on top of the 4 million that are projected to be built, or just if they do what's normal, she'll say victory? Cut red tape. Specifically, what red tape are you going to cut? Penalize firms that hoard available homes. Okay, this is good. We got one good policy. We got one good policy. Not very specific, but that's one. All right. That's a one. I also I'll give 2 for the baby bond. But you know, this is good. That's a good idea. And that's a good idea. Okay, 2 good ideas. Look at that. You can do it. I don't think this helps at all. This is $25,000 to put into the pockets of developers, basically. This is generating money to put into the pockets of developers. I just see this as not actually raising the supply of housing, but rather raising the profitability and the prices. This is like giving everybody student loans. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't actually lower the price of colleges unless you regulate the price of colleges directly, or you're building more capacity for colleges. If you just give extra money to the colleges, they'll suck it up. Okay. She wants to... Oh, God. $50,000 for new businesses. Can't wait to start my new business. I'm going to make so many businesses, chat. I'm going to make a streaming business one year. I'm going to make a merch business the next year. I'm going to have so many $50,000 tax breaks, but your head is going to fucking spin. Every year I'm going to be making a new business. Holy shit. Is that going to be... Then I'll have like a speaking business. Then I'm going to have like an art business. I'm going to have like business, stack businesses. What's the minimum amount of revenue you need? I'm going to have like 8 businesses. This is going to be awesome. Crackdown on anti-competitive practices. Okay. That doesn't mean anything because she's not saying anything there. Okay, that's the price gouging. Making permanent the Biden-Harris tax credit enhancements that are lowering costs by $800 a year. Guys, does your health insurance cost you $1,000 a month? Well, Kamala Harris is going to give you $50 back. She's not going to expand price negotiations? Her tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act gave Medicare the power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. As president, she'll accelerate the negotiations to cover more drugs. Why not all drugs? Medical debt will be removed from credit reports. And she'll cancel $7 billion of medical debt, which is nothing. So her healthcare policies are fucking trash and that's basically status quo, Andy. She will strengthen Social Security and Medicare for the long haul by making millionaires and billionaires pay their fair shares in taxes. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? That doesn't mean... This is, by the way, this is what she says is substantive. Vice President Harris will continue to support American leadership in semiconductors, clean energy, AI, and other cutting-edge industries of the future. She'll also fight for unions. She'll sign landmark pro-union legislation, including the PRO Act to support workers who choose to organize a bargain, and the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act to make the freedom for public service workers to form unions the law of the land. These are fine laws. Why didn't you pass it the first time? Because of a filibuster that you will not overturn. Vice President will not tolerate unfair trade practices from China or any competitor that undermines American workers. Okay, so this is new Cold War shit. She'll fight to raise the minimum wage, end some minimum wage for tipped workers with people with disabilities, establish paid family and medical leave, and eliminate taxes on tips. By the way, chat, you are now tipping me. You are now tipping me. You are no longer subscribing. You are tipping. Okay, so she has no plan for education. This is just stuff that Biden did and repeating what Biden did. There's nothing new here on student loans. Including by expanding high-quality home health care services for seniors and people with disabilities and ensuring hardworking families can afford high-quality child care. All while ensuring that care workers are paid a living wage and treated with dignity and respect they deserve. Okay, so that's nothing. Okay, so nothing on climate. So she wants to do the Trump administration policy on immigration. Oh, here we go. Here's her foreign policy. Vice President Harris will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to protect U.S. forces and interests from Iran and Iran-backed terrorist groups. Vice President Harris will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and she will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself. She and President Biden are working to end the war in Gaza such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. She and President Biden are working around the clock to get a hostage deal and ceasefire deal done. Meanwhile, as I said earlier in the stream, Politico reported that the administration told international aid organizations that they didn't care if Israel violated international law, that international law does not apply to Israel. Vice President Harris will make sure that America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century, and we strengthen, not abdicate, our global leadership. I've heard this before. It's called the Project for the New American Century. I've heard that phrasing before. He described the United States as the world's preeminent power and said that the nation failed to challenge to shape a new century favorable to American principles and interests. Challenge regimes hostile to our interests and value and preserve and extend an international order friendly to our security, our prosperity, and our principles. Yeah, this is just neocon shit. She's just literally quoting the neocon manifesto. She will invest in competitive advantages that make America the strongest nation on earth, American workers, innovation, and industry, and will work to ensure America remains a leader in the industries of the future, from semiconductors to clean energy to artificial intelligence. Second time she said she's going to subsidize AI. She has stood up to China's unfair economic practices to protect American workers, businesses, and families, and she has advanced our economic cooperation around the world, from rallying international leaders at an AI summit, again with the AI. All right, so looking through her entire platform, this is the most right-wing platform I've ever seen a Democrat run on in my life. This puts Bill Clinton to shame. That is Bill Clinton-esque level platform.
And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why we invited you here, to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
here. Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a 26-minute interview, so did they think she was failing and they wanted to get her out of there? I mean, honestly, like, I don't even see the point of the Kamala Harris interviews at this point. There's just nothing to it. It's crap. It's just the same old, same old. There's never even an attempt to make any kind of argument. It's just like, I'm not Joe Biden and Donald Trump sucks. That's it. That's the sum total of her pitch.